So welcome to the PHLpreK contracts training for FY 2023. We're really excited to be able to partner with you all, new providers this year. Really excited to be able to work with you. I am Carrie Lee. I'm the contracts manager for the PHLpreK intermediary, and I'm here with my colleague, Kate Zimmich. She's the contracts coordinator, and we're going to be helping lead you through this session. A few housekeeping items. Please have your phones and microphones muted. Type any questions in the question box. We'll try to get to as many questions along the way as we can, but we will be also putting all the questions and answers into an FAQ and sending it out after. This presentation is being recorded and slides will be included in the weekly newsletter, as well as they're going to be posted on Sparks Knowledge Center. Now we'll start off the agenda today with a welcome from the Office of Children and Families. We'll give you brief overviews of PHMC as the administrative intermediary and talk about Spark, the Quality Support Center. Then we'll spend the bulk of the time on contract deliverables and round out the session with some tips for preparing for contracting and next steps. So first, I want to throw it over to Amy Ludwig, PHLpreK Manager of Strategy and Policy for the Office of Children and Families.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to give a quick overview of the PHLpreK program, and then I'll pass things back to Carrie. But we always like to start with our mission, which is to increase access to increase access to quality early learning by offering free pre-K kindergarten programs to children regardless of their family income. And I want to thank you all for joining us today because we cannot do this without you. We cannot accomplish this mission without you. So thank you for helping us to make this a reality. There are four main commitments that drive our program: to increase center quality by providing instructional resources to providers, to offer resources that support healthy child development, that's inclusive screenings, to support staff growth and development, and finally, to provide registration and transition support for those children that are moving on to kindergarten. Here's a quick overview of the administrative structure of PHLpreK. It's managed by the Office of Children and Families, where I sit in the Early Childhood Division. But from there are two organizations that provide direct supports to providers. The Administrative Intermediary, PHMC, oversees contract deliverables and accountability. And then the Quality Support Center at Spark is there for coaching and professional development supports and additional resources to provide those quality supports direct to providers. All three of us, these three organizations, we're here really to support you. So please feel free to reach out with any questions or concerns that you might have. Here are the individual contact informations for those three organizations. And I just want to thank you again for having me today and for being a part of the PHLpreK program.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, so now on to a little bit about PHMC as the administrative intermediary. PHMC is responsible for the oversight of the PHLpreK program. We're here to help you interpret, understand, and be successful in meeting contract deliverables. We are your first point of contact around those deliverables, and your provider service specialist is here to help and support you. What we also do is the administration of your contract with all the providers. We are in charge of the flow of funds to providers, fiscal and compliance monitoring, program reporting, enrollment oversight, data collection, management and analysis, and also strategic partnerships. Our goals are to provide high quality provider services, provide accurate and timely enrollment-based payment, make recommendations for system growth and improvement based on data, refer system supports based on provider performance, goals, and priorities, and then provide really clear expectations about the contract deliverables. And we hope this session helps to do, start to do that today. There's several ways that you can contact us. For any general inquiries from providers, you can reach out to the PHL Pre-K inbox. We also have a childcare service desk available that can help answer questions. If you have site-specific contract questions, you can reach out to your provider service specialist. They're there to help. And then we also have a line for families interested in enrolling pre-K. We have an email and an intake number. So again, we are going to be sending out these slides with follow-up materials and posted in a newsletter and all of that. So you'll have all this information on hand. And now I want to throw it over to Allison Leshin, Deputy Director of Program Support for SPARK.
Good afternoon, everybody. So nice to be here with you all. Who is SPARK? We are the Quality Support Center, the quality support part of the work that you all do. We are really here to be your partners and your support system. We are not here to do critique or assessment of any kind. We are providing coaching, professional development, and lots of resources. Hopefully later on I can share some more information about us, but if you could change to the next slide. So what is the Quality Support's purpose? We support you as you work to strengthen your program. We're really looking to help you build quality and the strategies so that you can better serve the families and children that you support in Philadelphia. We have really thought about the supports we do, and we are very intentional of doing it based on your needs, your program needs. Not all one size fits all. We design it so that we really meet you where you're at. There's opportunity, and there are several peer networks and learning communities you can be a part of that will help you grow that way. We provide key supports, resources, and services, all of which are on our Knowledge Center. If you haven't checked out our Knowledge Center or our website, please do. It will not only tell you what supports we provide, but it will also give you resources and the ability to sign up for the free professional development that we're providing. And we really empower you to direct your own growth and improvement, because we know that it works better that if you lead the charge versus us telling you what to do. We're not here to fix you, we're here to support you. And we're looking forward to the start of the school year. Please stay informed on our website, all the professional development, including TSG, ASQ, and all the required trainings that support Philly Pre-K will be on our website. So stay tuned. They should be up within the next week or so.
Great, thanks, Allison. So now Kate and I will go through all the contract deliverables. So we'll go to the next slide, and here is a list of all of the deliverables. And I'll just go through the list, and this is the things that we'll be going over. License and stars in good standing, religious affiliation and discrimination, adherence to health and safety guidance, remote learning, growth providers moving to star 3, marketing and recruitment, eligibility conversion or aging in, average daily attendance, curriculum, outcomes assessment, and developmental screenings, 21st century minimum wage and benefits, suspension and expulsion, partnering with families, health assessment, health standards, kindergarten transition, data management, meeting and training participation, complying with monitoring and reporting requests, invoicing and payments, fiscal adherence, City of Philadelphia compliance, and termination. So on we go. Okay, first we'll talk about DHS compliance. You need to maintain your DHS or PDE license in good standing for your approved location. All children must be served at the approved location, and you need to notify PHMC prior to making any changes. Any providers that receive a provisional license during the operating year will continue to provide services to children until the end of the year. Providers must notify PHMC or the School District of Philadelphia if you're under that contract entity of any significant findings within 30 days, regardless of whether the findings involve a PHLpreK funded child or classroom. And any of those that have the school district as their contract entity should be aware that. They already know that. If PHLpreK staff do go into your site and see any violations, they will need to report it as well. Your award can be rescinded or your contract voided for several reasons. If you receive a provisional license after July 1st and before your contract is issued, if you have a negative sanction that results in the closure of your facility, if you have violations that result in the emergency removal of children from the facility by DHS, or any misrepresentation or fraud discovered in obtaining the DHS license. So if any of these instances occur, you need to notify OCF immediately, and OCF will help support families in relocating to other PHLpreK locations. All providers need to self-report the DHS violations listed on this slide to Octal and to PHMC or the school district within 48 hours. They are injury at a center requiring emergency room treatment or inpatient hospitalization, a death of a child receiving care at the facility, a facility fire that requires the service of the fire department, verified incidents of child abuse or neglect, fire safety, pediatric first aid, or water safety resulting in STAR suspension, violation of regulations causing child endangerment, injury, or death, or revocation or refusal to renew your DHS certificate of compliance. Those with a religious affiliation may offer programming in accordance with their beliefs, but you cannot deny a child's enrollment based on a religious affiliation. You need to let families choose to opt out of religious programming, and no religious instruction should occur during that 5.5-hour PHLpreK school day. Providers should not discriminate or permit discrimination against any child, staff member, or potential employment candidate because of race, ethnicity, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, national origin, ancestry, disability, marital status, familial status, or domestic or sexual violence victim status. This slide is a reminder that providers should adhere to guidance and implement strategies to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Strategies should be based on updated guidance from the CDC, Octal, and the City of Philadelphia. Current recommendations from Octal are to implement a child care facility COVID-19 health and safety plan. And providers are required to report positive COVID-19 cases via Qualtrics and REDCap, and that those surveys are emailed to you daily, and then also inform families of any suspected outbreaks. Providers are expected to provide in-person learning, but in preparation for any emergency closings, that includes those related to COVID, all providers must complete a remote learning waiver. These need to be approved by OCF prior to their program start date, and we'll provide more about the process for submitting those remote learning waivers in follow-up communications. Any requests for emergency closings, including those related to COVID, must be approved by OCF. So no requests should be sent to the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. Providers can be virtual for 1 business day while waiting for a response from OCF, and more information about the specifics of that process will be communicated in follow-up materials as well.
Okay, so for current STAR 3 and 4 providers, we do ask that you maintain good standing in STARS. For growth providers, just make sure that you are using resources to achieve your star 3 or 4 and complying with the deadlines actually, I think the timelines are missing from this slide, but we'll make sure that they're included in the linked ones. And that timeline are the STARS benchmarks for growth to make sure that you reach star 3 by the end of this fiscal year. You'll need to request, I think, STAR designation at or no later than June 30th of 2023. The benchmarks are going to be reviewed with the data from the ELRC. Sites that don't make progress towards those benchmarks, who are growth providers, they will be ineligible to receive, or could be ineligible to receive PHLpreK funding beyond this current fiscal year. So enrollment and recruitment, we want folks, and that this is part of the application process, that enrollment and recruitment plan, it really should be something that's working for you the entire year, and that working to make sure that you can maintain 100% enrollment with a wait list. Children must also be enrolled and discharged per the requirements of the procedures that are outlined in the FY23 enrollment provider policy. And you have to make sure that you are not including any additional application information or fees in advance of enrollment to a PHLpreK program or an association with PHLpreK services. So what that means is there can't be any application fee, anything to reserve a spot, no deposits, nothing like that associated with PHLpreK programming. Enrollment analysis. So we do have some target enrollment dates that we're hoping for folks to meet. The reason why we do this is just to make sure that you're not caught, unawares and while you're on your way to getting to full enrollment. So we're hoping that all providers in the system reach 50% by August 26th. I know a lot of you are working your way towards that now, and then 100% by September 30th. Sites that are not 100% enrolled and have seats that have been vacant for 30 or more days, we will contact you and make sure that you have and are working on developing your recruitment plan. If necessary, if OCF will determine whether or not PHLpreK seats should be reallocated, which just means moved around in the system. Current enrollment and waitlist status is a major consideration when thinking about how to reallocate or move those seats around. So a little bit more about that sort of seat swapping if it happens. And it's not a guarantee that it'll happen or anything. This is just the process that we use to consider that. So PHMC will support families always with PHLpreK children in finding a different location if seats get taken away. And if you are seeking an increase in your slot allocation, these are some of the things, or the main things that will be prioritized. Whether or not your location is a star 3 or 4, that you've been able to demonstrate PHLpreK contract compliance, and you're in good standings with Keystone Stars, and meeting quality improvement benchmarks. You have that 100% enrollment and an active waitlist in childcare, emphasis there on active waitlist in childcare, just to make sure that you are keeping in touch with those families on that waitlist. Also that you're meeting priority areas that are determined by the city. And then you can attest that the new slots will be put in a classroom that has the space and the qualified staff that are ready to go to serve those children. You would have heard a little bit more about this in the enrollment training, but we have up on the screen here a shot from Great Philly Schools. We know that this is a really great advertising tool that a lot of families use to make their decisions about what kind of care and when choosing which site to send their children to. We really encourage folks to stay on top of the information that's in Great Philly Schools, mostly meetings like site information, your phone number, your address, contact info, and then information about your program. So, hours of operation, whether or not you serve school-age children, if there's before and after care, because that information, parents really use it to weigh their decision making process when they're trying to find a place to go. So eligibility, and some of these questions can get very specific. So if you've got them, definitely enter them in the question box. We may not get to every single one of them, but we do plan to send out that written form of question responses. So if you've got them, pop them in there, but we may not get to every single one. So children, of course, are eligible for PHLpreK if they're 3 or 4 on or by September 1st of the enrollment year, younger than kindergarten entry age, and they live in Philadelphia. Children who might be able to age into your PHLpreK program are a currently enrolled 2-year-old that will be 3 by September 1st. So if I have a child who is 2 now and is going to turn 3 on August 1st, and they're in the 2-year-old room, and then starting September 1, you want to enroll them in PHLpreK, that's fine. Currently enrolled children who turned 3 after September 1 of 2021, so who are 3 right now, and didn't participate in Head Start or pre-K counts at the location, at the PHLpreK location they wish to enroll in, can enroll in PHL Pre-K. So if you had a child who was not in a funded PHL Pre-K seat by Head Start or Pre-K Counts, then they can enroll in PHL Pre-K. So slot conversion and supplanting, what that means is if a slot gets converted from a kind of funding or if PHL Pre-K replaces a slot in a way that is inappropriate. So children who are age eligible currently in pre-K programming at the site who are being funded by an alternative source. So what we mentioned before, right, Pre-K Counts or Head Start cannot be converted to PHL Pre-K funding. You cannot convert infant and toddler slots to PHL Pre-K slots, and you cannot convert existing Head Start or Pre-K Count slots to PHL Pre-K slots. And really the intention here, it seems a little bit sort of like shell gamey, but what's happening here is that the city really wants for the opportunity for seats in the city to expand for children who can receive free pre-K services. So that's why they don't want you, taking away infant toddler seats or taking away opportunities for Head Start or Pre-K Counts children. They want to increase the availability of seats because as everybody I think on this call knows, the demand is there. It's just a matter of reaching the right families.
So providers must have an attendance policy. Your policy should include their procedures to deliver and document supports that remediate chronic and consecutive absences. You really want to document contact with the family about absences and keep it on file in childware. You want to communicate with families in a variety of different ways if they're unresponsive and really make sure it's accessible to them. Also provide support and resources to families when absences are due to hardships. And slots will be held for 30 days for children who have an approved extended absence due to a long-term illness. You should monitor attendance using sign-in and sign-out procedures, enter that attendance weekly into childware, and keep that supporting documentation in case it's requested by compliance monitors. You want to review average daily attendance monthly, and if it falls below 85%, you want to consider what kind of challenges the families might be having. Are there any patterns? What can you do to assist them in helping overcome those hardships? But in the end, you really want to make sure you stick to your policies, make sure you stick to those communication timelines that you laid out and all the strategies within it. So if a child is expected to be absent for more than 30 days or has consecutive absences approaching 30 days, what you should do is notify your contract entity and the administrative intermediary. You'll be asked to submit documentation of regular communication with families during that period of absences. So again, that's that making sure you have that documentation available of your emails or logs of your phone calls with families. The contract entity, which is PHMC or the school district, the intermediary, which is PHMC, and OCF will review these instances on a case-by-case basis. A determination will be made by OCF about whether that child should remain as an active enrollment or if the child should be discharged and added to the wait list. So in these circumstances, PHL Pre-K invoicing will still apply though. Once a child is discharged, providers will have 60 days to fill that seat. And failure to really comply with any of these steps may result in PHMC not continuing to fund that PHL Pre-K slot and a provider not receiving payment. For your program calendar, you should make sure to schedule a minimum of 180 days of PHL Pre-K service, and that's between September 1st and June 30th. Snow days or any scheduled cancellations need to be made up to ensure that full number of days. And providers must also adhere to state or city guidance around mandated COVID closures. So here we're talking about the daily schedule. You should have 5.5 hours per day of developmentally appropriate instructional time. That should include 60 minutes of physical activity. What's not included in that 5.5 hours is arrival, departure time, and also nap time. So you can have it within the day, but it's just not included in that 5.5 hours. If any part of the PHL pre-K day occurs between 7:30 or after 4:30 p.m., a written request must be submitted to PHMC for approval by OCF prior to that classroom opening.
Okay, so curriculum. As many of you probably know by now and are perhaps waiting for your curriculum kits, which will get there in August, it is required that you implement programming based on the creative curriculum from Teaching Strategies. PHL Pre-K staff and program leadership, you are supported through the quality support services brought to you by Spark. And then school district providers can access supports from the school district as well for coaching. If using a supplemental curriculum, then the creative curriculum still must be the primary one and in use for all 180 days. If you do choose a supplemental curriculum, it must align with the creative curriculum and also be responding to the documented developmental needs of children in the classroom, and be on the OCTA list of curricular alignments to the 2014 Pennsylvania Learning Standards for Early Childhood. So outcomes assessment, and this should line up right with how your curriculum is moving throughout the school year. We ask for outcome assessment and that it is conducted continuously via child observation to inform and reflect on all months of service a child is in care in each domain of development as outlined in Teaching Strategies Gold. So this can feel like a lot. So when you're looking or doing the TSG training, definitely recommend having like maybe a map of what all of those dimensions and objectives are so that you can have it in your brain how you're going to do the observations and make sure that you can really capture what you need for each child throughout the school year. Because we do ask that each child have a minimum of one documented observation in every dimension or objective per checkpoint time frame. And really make sure too that you're sort of taking advantage when you can of tagging multiple dimensions and objectives per observation so that you can really get a good broad sweep of information while you're entering it in there. Also have a minimum of 2 family conferences to discuss child progress and set educational goals. So we want families to be involved and aware of what's happening in the classroom and those outcomes, and record that progress using the TSG online data tool, which is going to be reviewed by PHMC twice per year, at least in November and May. So developmental screening is kind of the word version of it, and we'll look at it as a calendar sample of just how the timing plays out here. But for developmental screening, we ask that you complete at least one screening that reflects all domains of development for every child every year within 45 calendar days of the child's program start date. So it's within 45 days. If they start on September 1st, then it's going to be due October 15th. That screening has to be completed. We also want you to share information with families within 14 days of completing the screenings. Within 2 weeks, we want you to talk to the family about it. If needed and you get consent to refer, we ask that you refer any child with an identified concern to L1 for assessment. Make sure you document both those conversations, the one with the family and the one within L1, and that those happen within 14 and 7 days of the screening completion. As needed, make sure that you're rescreening per tool guidelines. If a concern is identified, it doesn't always trigger a referral so much as a rescreen in the future. And it's something I really recommend too is that ASQ has a really great age calculator on their website, which helps you make sure that you're getting the exact right screening tool for the age of the child. Sometimes it's a little not so intuitive which screener age range you should be using. Children who have IEPs are exempt from this developmental screening requirement if the IEP is current in the child's file in childware, and if there's a request for early childhood mental health services for that child. With an IEP, they may still be asked to complete an ASQ SE. So we just have this on the screen here as a way to plan out how you want to do the developmental screenings. It's an example of what the timing would look like. If you have a child who starts in that yellow highlighted box there on September 6th, that means that their developmental screening is going to be due October 20th. That's 45 days away. And then if you have the conversation with the family 2 weeks after that, that'll be November 2nd. And if needed, the referral to L1 should be completed by the 9th. So if most of your children are enrolling in that first full week of September there and starting the program, then almost all, or rather all of your developmental screening work should be done by mid-November. So you don't want to be racing to do it right that first week of November. If you can sort of tackle that in batches at a time, make sure you're not overworking or overstressing yourself. And this is of course happening at the same time as outcomes assessment, right? Those observation collections. you're going to want to schedule this out to make sure that the workload is manageable. So this is an example of the timeline, and you don't want to sort of back yourself into a corner in early November there when things come due. If you're interested in getting a waiver for curriculum assessment and developmental screenings, typically the criteria are that you are a participant in PHLpreK for a year. New programs you can appeal with a significant justification for why you want to shift. And then you have to make sure that you're implementing that curriculum, also that screening tool and outcomes assessment consistently. And waivers must be submitted to PHMC and be approved by OCF. And there will be more information about that specific process in future communications. So for curriculum assessment and screening waivers, we want to make sure that they are coming from the appropriate lists. On the slide here, you'll see for curriculum, they have to come from an OCDL list of curricular alignments to the 2014 Pennsylvania Learning Standards for Early Childhood. Assessment has to come from the OCDL list of approved assessment vendors. Developmental screening should be coming from summary table of examined screening tools. Providers with an approved waiver are still going to be responsible for achievement and child outcomes benchmarks. And also we'll be covering cost of staff professional development, technical assistance, and coaching that is necessary to implement any of these alternatives like curriculum screening or assessment if they get the waiver. The waiver may also be rescinded if a provider is unable to maintain 100% compliance in meeting child outcomes benchmarks. So up on the slide here, we have some information about staff qualifications. I know, especially from newer providers, we've been getting some questions about this. And so the first part here is it refers to directors, owner-operators of family childcare, lead teachers, and assistant teachers. The next slide will give us a little more detail about what this actually means. So every childcare center location has to, of course, have a full-time director or administrator with a minimum of a PA career pathway placement level B. So that's a lot of words. We'll see what that means in the next slide, just like what actually that means for your staff qualifications. The director and administrator also, of course, must meet all other DHS regulations. Each classroom must have a lead teacher, and that person also must have a minimum of a PA career pathway placement level B. Owner-operators of a family childcare acting as a lead teacher must also meet that same level B requirement. Each classroom that has more than 10 children, regardless of whether or not they're PHLpreK children, right? You might have like 10 pre-K counts children and 2 PHLpreK children, but that's more than 10 total. So they have to have an assistant teacher in that room. And that person, the assistant teacher, must have a minimum of a PA career pathway placement level A. For any school district providers, as you might expect, any lead teachers, assistant teachers, directors, et cetera, must meet the staff qualifications established by the district and also meet the qualifications noted above. So here's sort of the nuts and bolts of the staff qualifications. So the table on the left here describes the position and then the career pathway placement level that is required for that position. So you'll see that directors, family childcare, owner operators, and lead teachers are all level B, and assistant teachers are all level A. And that comes from the PA Keys career pathway levels, which are linked in the slide, but if you give that a Google, you'll come up with the career pathway document. And what's on the right-hand side here, these pale blue boxes, that comes actually right from that document. We snipped it from there. And in order to reach one of those levels, that staff person has to be able to check off one of those bullets. So for a person to have attained level A, they either need to have a current CDA certificate from the Council for Professional Recognition, they have to have a current school age credential, or they need 9 early childhood education credits, which this is a change from last year, if you're familiar. That used to be 6 and now it's 9. And the way that gets verified, so the PA Keys has a professional development registry. If you're not familiar, you're going to get familiar, real cozy with the registry. But they are the people who verify these credentials. So please don't submit your things to Spark. Please don't submit your things to PHMC. We are not the people who are reading transcripts, checking out diplomas, that kind of thing. That should all be verified at the PD registry. And they will interpret those documents and assign a level, a career pathway placement level to each staff person. And that's something that has to get renewed every year. The reason why that happens, the renewal, usually it's just a check to say like, yep, still here, still have these, requirements. They typically ask for a renewal if to check in on something like an expiration date for a CDA, or if you added any additional education to your profile that you want to say, oh, I took, XYZ ECE credits, so that you should get that added to your placement. For level B, This is something that's new this year. So this is all your lead teachers, directors, family childcare owner operators. You can attain level B if you have a regionally accredited ECE degree focused or ECE focused ASB or AST. So that's our PRISM folks. That counts as long as your degree was conferred on or before June 30th of this year. So if you graduated 3 weeks ago with that degree or before, then you count and are in a would be assigned a level B. Also an associate's in ECE, an associate's or bachelor's in a related field with 18 ECE credits, an associate's or bachelor's in an unrelated field with 30 ECE credits, or an elementary ed degree with 12 ECE credits. So any one of those qualifies a staff person to be a lead teacher or a director. Substitutes, of course, classes that are staffed by full-time staff, and all substitutes must meet the credentials for the position they're filling. If you are using a long-term sub for more than 90 days, we will ask that you complete a quality improvement plan so that you can plan to make sure that you can recruit and retain the staff that you need to meet the qualifications. So here's a little bit more about that PA Keys PD registry. Again, this is going to be the data system. So we have childware, that's most of our like site and child level information, where that information is housed. The PA Keys is sort of where we keep staff information, and that is where the PD registry, and that is run by the PA Keys. And those are the people, again, who are going to be verifying the credentials, transcripts, that information. Providers will document all staff credentials in the PD professional development registry. And all staff will acquire and maintain a verified career pathway level. So that's that level A, level B. New hires have to complete a profile and have that verified level within 45 days of hire. PHLpreK has a special relationship with the PD registry, and as long as you identify yourself as a PHLpreK provider, you should get sort of bumped to the beginning of the line in this verification process. So make sure, if you're working with the registry, to identify yourself that way. And what I want you to make note of here is that within 45 days of hire, that level has to be assigned. So folks need to have submitted their transcripts within enough time to be able to get the appropriate level assigned to them. And oftentimes the registry has some questions or maybe some more information. So sometimes, you know, there might be a little back and forth. So make sure that your staff are on top of this, meeting this requirement, and making sure that they get the information in that they need so that they can be compliant. So if you're sitting there worrying about your staff and their qualifications and whether or not they meet them, know that there is a little bit of flexibility in the form of waivers. They do require some work from folks. And the lead teacher waiver process hasn't exactly been completely outlined yet this year. So more information on that in coming communications. But know now that a lead teacher with a degree who does not currently meet the PA career pathway level B or higher, so perhaps someone with an unrelated degree who doesn't have those 30 ECE credits, for example, they could apply for a waiver to fill the position of PHLpreK lead teacher program for one program year. The waiver also applies to the teacher position for family childcare in the case where the family childcare owner operator does not serve as the full-time lead teacher. It's not a guarantee, but again, that example of someone with a degree who doesn't have 30 ECE credits, they could apply for the waiver potentially and qualify temporarily for the year. There's also a temporary waiver for assistant teachers, and an individual who doesn't meet that level A can submit for waiver consideration if they do meet a rising level A, which is different from level A. And if you get into that PA Keys career pathway document, you'll see the bullets that are involved in that career pathway level. But they have to meet that career pathway rising level A. They have to be able to document action towards meeting the education requirements to get them to that full level A. And they do also have to participate in Tier 3 coaching supports.
The providers.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
No problem. The providers need to comply with the city's 21st century minimum wage benefits. This increases this year to $15 and applies only to staff directly related to PHLpreK. There are some exemptions if your agency has 5 or fewer employees, or if you're a nonprofit with a contract award of less than $100,000. If you're unable to meet the requirement, you may request a temporary waiver, which is submitted directly to the city for approval. This form on the right was shared as part of enrollment packet. It should be shared with families to support access to full day, full year services if needed. You should also maintain your Child Care Works contract for before and after care. Now, it's important to ensure that you have a written agreement with families that should outline the services that you're providing, any fees associated with services that are outside of PHL Pre-K, and really just the expectations of families. There's a DHS template available here, and we're sharing a list of what this must include just for reference, so you can go back and take a look if needed. Providers should also have an inclusion policy in your family and staff handbook that should address enrolling children with special needs, providing direct support through your program in LWIN, staff supports, and procedures for referral. So providers are really not permitted to deny enrollment or waitlist opportunities to any family eligible for PHL Pre-K. You'll also need a suspension and expulsion policy. Providers are not permitted to suspend or expel a child. If folks need support in developing your policy, Sparks Quality Support Center can assist you, and we'll give you more information about that at the end of our presentation. Sharing here also the opt-out definitions of suspension and expulsion for reference. You note that suspension does include timeouts in administrative offices and sending children home early. In terms of health assessments, providers need to verify that at least one health assessment is not over a year old and should be kept in the child's file. Providers should participate in initiatives identified by OCF to help make sure that children have access to these healthy screenings, and children should not be denied access to PHL Pre-K or discharge if these screenings are not up to date. So you should be providing nutritious meals and snacks every day and adhere to age-appropriate nutritional requirements like CACFP. Providers are strongly encouraged to participate in CACFP. If you're new and want to know more about the program, there's also links here to get more information. You should be also familiar with the Philadelphia Nutrition Standards for Early Care and Education. That's linked here as well. In terms of physical activity, you need to offer 60 to 90 minutes of physical activity. In terms of screen time, you want to limit screen time to 30 minutes or less per week for ages 2 and older. In terms of water, you want to offer clean, safe drinking water and have that available at all times. Child care facilities caring for children who have 13 or more children must test all potable water outlets for lead and submit results to the Department of Department of Public Health. There's a link here to read more about the city requirement. We also linked here, there's a state program that launched. It provides free water testing and expert support to childcare facilities in schools in Pennsylvania. So please check out that link if you need support. And then also, just as an optional item, is to develop strategies to ensure that fried foods are not offered more than 2 times per week.
Okay, so in line with that outcomes assessment, right, we mentioned those 2 family conferences. This has to do with family partnerships. We want you to make sure that you're communicating regularly with families and caregivers and setting children's educational goals. There was a question in the box about whether or not Zoom meetings are acceptable, and I believe our policy is mostly that whatever works for families. So if a family can't access Zoom, then that doesn't really work, right? But if they can come to the site for a parent night or something like that, then that sounds great for that family. Whatever works, really. So make sure that you're establishing a regular system for reporting about progress, getting feedback from families, using language and platforms that they can understand and access. If you say outcomes and benchmarks to a grown-up and you see their eyes crossed, then maybe reconsider how you might want to explain that to them. Also, if folks aren't using Brightwheel, then maybe, you know, a different kind of mode of communication might work better for your families, or more information about how to use it. You know, you might have to try a couple of different things out, ways to reach folks. Also see if you can provide opportunities for families to be involved in planning events, maybe trainings or workshops that happen at your site. Maybe you have a parent do a training on how to use Brightwheel or whatever, you know, whatever it is that you want to work with them on. But the more you can involve them in the process, right, and communication, the better. Also make sure you document a family grievance policy. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but that should be shared with families at enrollment and be in the family handbook. Also make sure that you're working with OCF to deploy resource materials to PHL Pre-K families throughout the program year and support distribution and completion of that year-end PHL Pre-K Family Satisfaction Survey. So family grievances, this is a little bit more about like what happens with a grievance. If a concern from a PHL Pre-K enrolled family gets reported directly to the intermediary, so to PHMC or to OCF, this is how it plays out. It'll be addressed in a fair and consistent manner that aligns with regulatory standards, best practices, and PHL Pre-K mission. A member of the team from the intermediary is going to record the grievance from the family. Every effort will be made to address concerns collaboratively. So we're not just going to take information from one side and act. We're going to try and speak to you about it first. When an issue or concern cannot be resolved for the family informally through something like policy or protocol clarification, then the intermediary team is going to follow up with the provider and the assigned contract entity to identify a resolution. If the grievance results in some contract noncompliance, either a quality improvement plan or a corrective action plan, depending on the severity of the noncompliance, it's going to be issued to outline the action steps for the provider to resolve the grievance and also prevent future noncompliance. So kindergarten transition, we heard Amy mention that before. For all children who will turn 5 by the age requirements established by the School District of Philadelphia for the following school year, we ask that a kindergarten transition plan is created within 60 days of the child's entry date. So you might notice or be thinking, okay, this is just 15 days after the developmental screening needs to be completed too, depending on the age of the child that's enrolled. So there are a couple of things that sort of come due very quickly at the beginning third of the school year. So you want to make sure that you're planning in your calendars for how this is going to shake out for your work. Kindergarten transition meeting also is held with families to discuss education options for kindergarten by January 1st. So if you think if a child enrolls September 10th, 60 days out, that's November 10th, and then this meeting has to be completed by January 1st. So that's pretty rapid fire in the fall and winter there. So you want to be planning out how you're going to have, you know, work with families on this and get that plan and that meeting scheduled. So the kindergarten transition meeting includes registration for catchment and out of catchment registration deadlines. And that's just to make sure that families understand all the options that they might want and can access them for their families, so that they know, what's out there and have enough time to make an informed decision. OCF is currently developing resources on this, and this is something that they will be sharing with families as soon as they're put together. The registration status in school for each child must also be entered by May 31st, and that's going to be something that you put into childware. Speaking of putting things in childware, so a major part of contract compliance work is making sure that the required documents are uploaded. So we talked about the PD registry, that's going to be staff credentials. Those are going to have to get uploaded there. For child level deliverables, things like enrollment verification, IEPs, developmental screening documents, health assessments, that kindergarten transition information, all those are going to need to get uploaded into childware. And as you'll see too, the contract exhibits, which is more of a site level document, that's also going to be something that's going to be needed to or get uploaded into childware. So we've said a couple of times in this training that more information is coming, about the lead teacher waiver, about remote learning waivers, information about closings. So you've have to stay engaged in the project and in continuous system improvement, which means making sure that you are attending meetings that are convened by OCF and attending applicable trainings, things like summer trainings, peer learning circles, all that good stuff that Allison mentioned from the Quality Support Center about developmental screening, TSG, creative curriculum, and other trainings that are related to PHL Pre-K priorities, as well as keeping on top of that newsletter. I know it comes out on the regular, but at least give it a skim every time, because you really never know what's going to be in there and how it could relate to what you're doing. Curriculum and outcomes assessment trainings are required for lead teachers and administrators who have not taken the training previously. And as you might expect, right, of course, as a contracted provider, you're expected to comply with all monitoring and reporting requests made by PHMC, OCF, and their respective contract entity, and any other organization engaged by PHMC or OCF for the purpose of reporting on the PHL Pre-K program. This reads as like maybe a little invasive, but really what's going on here is we want to know what's happening, partly so that we can tell the story of PHL Pre-K, so we can keep making sure that the program stays funded, right? If we don't tell people about the good things that are happening in your program, then they're not going to want to fund them. So part of the reason why we collect information about it is so that we can keep sharing that and keep building the program up. Participate also in quality improvement activities when recommended by OCF or its designee, and participate in data collection and evaluation activities, including external evaluator like NEAR. Some of you might be familiar with that project. It's a team of researchers that come in and do classroom observations that have to do with classroom environment and teacher interactions. PHL Pre-K network and quality supports evaluations is recommended or directed by OCF and its designees. Okay, so how are you going to get paid? For invoicing, you may currently, as of July 2022, begin expending anticipated funds. So you can start buying supplies, you can start paying for trainings for your teachers, especially if they're folks who, you know, maybe have to go to like a TSG or a creative curriculum training. You can pay them for those hours out of your PHL Pre-K budget. Just make sure that that's something that you're taking into account from your total, you know, contract award. Initial payments, though, keep in mind if you're doing this, that the first payment won't be dispersed until after the first month of service. So that won't come to you until October. The first month of service is September. $875 is the current approved rate for reimbursement for a child who attended at least one day in a month. So $875 is the approved enrollment for an approved enrollment that attended at least one day of the month. That's what you can invoice for, and your invoice can never exceed the total slot allocation. So if you have 20 children allocated to your site and 20 attended, then you can invoice for 21. Invoices are submitted across 10 months from October to July by the 10th of the month following the month of service. So if you're invoicing for November, you're going to do that by December 10th. The intermediary is going to get notified immediately of any kind of discrepancies between approved enrollments and attendance records, and that has to be corrected prior to invoice submission. School district providers are paid based on terms outlined in the district provider agreement. Payment to providers will be made within 21 days following approval of an invoice. Eligibility verification, however, so that verification of where the child lives and how old they are, that occurs within 60 days of enrollment. So 60 days is after that invoicing period happens. So if a child is found to be ineligible, then recoup will happen for payments made for ineligible enrollments later on, within 60 days of when you invoice for that child. And just for this contract year, in FY23, September and October payments can be made based on slot allocation instead of enrollment and attendance. So for September and October only, if you have 10 children enrolled and attended, but you were allocated 20, you can invoice for 20, regardless of whether or not you had 20 kids enrolled and attended, and especially if you only had 10. And that's only the case for September and October. We do want you working on that enrollment, right, to get to 100%. So please make sure that you get there. But we sort of cut you that, you know, give you a little bit more time to get some traction on enrollment until November. And starting in November, that's going to be based on that enrollment and attendance. Payment will be based on enrollment and attendance.
Okay, so now fiscal expectations. So there are several levels of review, fiscal reviews that occur. We're trying to coordinate now a training with OCF and PHMC's fiscal department around these fiscal expectations. So it's another thing, look out for that to be coming out soon. But first, let's start off with the level of reviews. So there are 3 types here. First is desk reviews. So this is PHMC performs a desk review on a 10% randomly selected sample of providers every year. And that's with those with annual PHL Pre-K revenue below $300,000. We also do these desk reviews on providers with fiscal concerns identified by PHMC or OCF. The desk review is going to verify adherence to PHL pre-K billing and fiscal reporting guidelines. These fiscal reviews are going to be announced, and PHMC may recommend corrective actions based on these findings. All PHL pre-K providers are going to be submitting mid-year expense report reviews. We have a template available for that you'll be filling in. And then as of end of year expense report reviews, we're going to request year-end expense reports from all providers with revenue below $300,000 that are not selected for that desk review sample. PHMC may implement additional fiscal monitoring based on findings of those expense reviews. Now, some may need external fiscal reviews. These are those that have higher contracts with PHL pre-K. So providers with $300,000 to below $500,000 in PHL pre-K revenue, you'll need to have an independent auditor conduct an agreed upon procedure, or AUP, in accordance with the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. For providers with contracts of $500,000 or more in PHL pre-K revenue, you'll need an external audit, often referred to as a yellow book audit. That's in accordance with generally accepted government auditing standards. And then those with $750,000 in federal funding are going to require a federal single audit. So the external review should separately break out PHL pre-K funding and expenditures during each program year that's part of the provider's fiscal year, so your fiscal year. So that could be if your fiscal year ends on December 31st, you need to add January to June of that year, and then also July to December of that year. As applicable, the audit must encompass the provider's total operation and include a separate schedule for the PHL pre-K agreement to disclose all differences between receipts and expenditures under that agreement and any prior agreement for which the provider received PHL pre-K funding during that same fiscal year. Providers who need to complete external reviews must complete it 3 months from the close of books of your fiscal year. So again, that could be, the calendar year, which is January to December. Could be some folks have their fiscal year on a July to June fiscal year to align with the schools. So it's submitted on your fiscal year. You need to submit the executive summary or attestation form as documentation of compliance with this requirement. That's submitted annually by October 30th of the following program year. You may request an extension, a one-time extension to PHMC no later than 2 months following the close of your fiscal year. A 90-day one-time extension may be granted if the request includes an engagement letter from an auditor, so we know that it's, the engagement is taking place. 30-day one-time extension may be granted if the request does not include that engagement letter from the auditor. And for consideration of an extension, a compelling reason must be provided. So we know that's a lot. So, just wanted to reiterate that, we are working on a training to help provide more guidance around these fiscal items.
Yeah, Carrie, I was just thinking, so for providers who are thinking maybe you might fall in one of these review categories for this year, and that's going to be in your contract award amount, which you're not necessarily going to receive in full, but if you think you're going to be over, it's likely you'll be over 300,000, and you're sitting there wondering, how is this going to apply to you? I would get with your accountant now to think about this. And I don't mean your tax person necessarily. It really should be a review that's conducted by a certified public accountant, someone who can complete a full audit, and they're going to be able to help you at least make sure that your books are ready to make sure that you can meet this requirement. It's something that's going to truly, especially if you're incurring expenses for PHL pre-K now, you're going to want to get ahead of it. because it's really hard to backtrack, especially on financial stuff like this. So again, if you think that this might apply to you and your contract award is going to be over 300K, talk to your accountant ASAP.
Very good point, Kate. Okay, so for City of Philadelphia compliance, you're going to need to maintain good standing as a vendor with the City of Philadelphia, fulfill all tax obligations, city, state, and federal. For those that received a conditional award, you should know who you are. The deadline to meet tax compliance is August 1st. So you should have reached out to Revenue to try to get that settled. If you're having any trouble getting a response from Revenue, now or in the future, please let us know by emailing the PHLpreK inbox. You also need to adhere to the City of Philadelphia general provisions. That's an attachment to the contract, and just make sure all providers should be reviewing those.
Okay, so up on the screen here, I'm not going to read these out to you folks, but this is just a list of definitions that have to do with compliance and a written notification about compliance. So there's a range here from quality improvement plan all the way up to notice of termination. It includes things like enrollment holds. So just to, when you have some time, check it out to think about the kinds of compliance notifications you might get. Hopefully not. Termination, though, something we want to be really clear with folks on. So the following may result in termination of a contract. Failure to maintain DHS or PDE license in good standing, failure to procure and maintain applicable insurance coverages, unresolved noncompliance with a notice of default, egregious area of noncompliance, including but not limited to noncompliance jeopardizing the health and safety of children enrolled, preventing or restricting access to PHLpreK services, creating undue hardship for families or enrolled PHLpreK children, compromising PHLpreK integrity and public message, or with potential to impact the manner and accuracy of payment for PHLpreK services. If terminated, a provider may be ineligible also to reapply until at least 1 year from the effective date of termination has passed, and then only in the active RFQ cycle. So you wouldn't be able to apply as a renewal applicant at that time. And really, we don't expect folks to get to this point, and we hope that they don't. And keep in mind that your contract specialist is here, and so are the folks at the Quality Support Center to make sure that it doesn't get this far. For a notice of default, so this is something that you can appeal. A PHLpreK provider may submit a written appeal following the receipt of a notice of default to PHLpreK contract entity, OCF, and the intermediary. Written appeal must be made within 10 business days of receipt of the noncompliance notification. So you've got to turn that around 2 weeks later. It includes supporting documentation that demonstrates required compliance. OCF, PHMC, and the contract entity, where appropriate, will review and respond to the written appeal within 20 business days. Final written decision from OCF will be binding. If the letter of appeal is submitted without written compliance documentation, information, and argument, so if you can't back up your claim about the compliance, the notice of default or slot reallocation and timeline will stand. Quality Support Center, of course, like I said, will be there to provide responsive interventions and remediate deficiencies. Really, we're not hoping for folks to get to this point, but if they do, this is how the process can and will work. But again, we hope that you are in touch with your support coaches at the QSC and the folks here, your contracts, your provider services specialists at PHMC to make sure that it doesn't get to that point. So we're going to pause here for questions. So we have one about whether or not a child loses their funding source. And Angela, I think what you mean is like an example of a child who maybe qualified for pre-K accounts, but the family income changed, so they're no longer eligible for it. I think in this case, I believe you are able to enroll in PHLpreK because that child will no longer be taking up, you won't be pulling a child from pre-K accounts who would have been eligible for it otherwise. But Jennifer, if you want to hop in on that one, I don't know if you're still on. No, she's not still on. But I think in that case specifically, where the child is no longer actually eligible to receive that particular kind of funding because their eligibility, right, for something like pre-K counts has shifted, then again, I think that is okay to then enroll that child in PHL pre-K. But that has to do with a change with that family and their circumstance, and not so much he's saying this pre-K counts child will now be PHL pre-K. CCW. Let me double check about that. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know, Carrie, do you
Yeah,
know?
we'll go and check and then make sure to include it in the FAQ document.
Okay. Let's see. I see another question popping up. Yeah, it's sticky, and I appreciate you asking the questions. It looks like that's it for now.
Okay, great. We can move on to the next section then. That's preparing for contracting. Now that we've gone over all the deliverables, but please, if you have any questions too, just make sure to keep putting them in the chat box or the question box. So in preparation for contracting, you'll need to submit a number of exhibits. These include the list here. These are your policies, or your, we'll go down the list, your program daily schedule. I'll say first, we do have samples and templates available for a lot of these, and we're going to be providing a checklist at the very end that you can access all of those items. So you're going to be submitting your program daily schedule, a program calendar, your attendance policy, an enrollment and waitlist policy, your grievance policy, suspension and expulsion policy, your kindergarten transition plan template. On the next slide is the line item budget, a copy of your valid DHS license, and then a copy of your insurance documentation. You want to have evidence of the insurance must be submitted to your contract entity, PHMC or the school district prior to your start date. Obtaining and maintaining insurance coverage as applicable, and you may request attestations if certain coverages are not needed. So here's just an insight into the review process. So you're going to submit all of these exhibits in Childware by August 5th. PHMC will track the exhibit submission, and then the review of exhibits is going to be broken up into by PHMC and Spark. And we want to let you know this because if your policies or exhibits need revisions, PHMC or Spark staff may be following up with you. So PHMC is going to review the program calendar, daily schedule, attendance and enrollment waitlist policy, your line item budget, the DHS license, and then your certificate of insurance. And Spark is going to review the program grievance policy, suspension and expulsion policy, and your kindergarten transition plan. And after all that review is completed, PHMC is going to conform the contracts and then send that out to you all as providers. So some tips for completing exhibits. This first one is mainly for the returning providers about having the correct program year. But this is a reminder that we are in FY23 as the program year. So that should be referenced in titles or headings. You need to use the appropriate program name. It's PHL pre-K, so not Philly pre-K, or you have any hyphens within that tag. You need to use the correct title for the city. It's the Office of Children and Families, not the old, what they used to be called was the Mayor's Office of Education. And make sure you're submitting, when you submit your DHS license, that it's not expired. And now we'll go into some tips for each of those exhibits. So for, no, you can go on. The program daily schedule, make sure that's including that 5.5 hours It includes meals, transitions, 60 minutes of active play, and it doesn't include that arrival, departure, and nap time. So we have a sample on the next slide of just what that might look like. In terms of, you can see it has the 5.5 hours. You'll see that X in the middle is around nap time. Like you can have that on the schedule, of course, but that's just not included in the 5.5 hours. On the next, this next one is for Kate.
Thanks. Yeah, so this is an example, and it's actually very similar to the calendar template that we're going to be sending you guys. So this is an example of the calendar. Some things we want to highlight or make sure are included in that. Make sure you're putting in any kind of scheduled closures or holidays, something like, professional development or expected breaks. Let me see. Make sure that you have your program start date and end date on the calendar. Again, any scheduled closings. We want to see the total number of days of service. It's required that you complete 180 through the contract year. We really recommend that you schedule more than that, just in case there is some unexpected closure and something needs to, and you need just like a couple of days in your back pocket to be able to use up. And make sure that you are counting up the days of programming per month in each month there. So you can see September has the 21 days counted, December has 17, so that we can add them up quickly and see what's happening per month. So on the screen here, you don't have to read everything that's up here. What's on the left hand is just a snip of the sample of the attendance policy that you'll get linked in the contract exhibit checklist. So make sure that it references, the references in it, the policy adheres to the CDC, OCDEL, city, and Caring for Our Children guidance for health-related exclusions. This speaks to COVID, but also other infectious disease considerations. Also, make sure that you reference a child who might be absent for 30 days or more without prior approval from the program director and intermediary may be discharged and placed on the wait list if interested and will be able to re-enroll if a slot becomes available. Most of this is contingent on communication with that family, right? You don't just want somebody to go dark for 30 days and discharge them. We want to see that you've reached out to them. Chronic or extended absences, excused or unexcused, will be reviewed by OCF and PHMC on a case-by-case basis to determine if a child is to be discharged after 30 days. So enrollment and waitlist policy, again, same format here. On the left is a snip of the sample policy. That'll be in the exhibit checklist there, so you don't have to try and read what's on here. You'll be able to do it on your own time. And you can see part of it, what's cut off there includes the acceptable documentation for eligibility verification. But part of the policy should also clearly identify that PHLpreK is a free program. So again, you might have before or after care that has a cost associated with it, or summer program or something that's separate. PHLpreK is free. And include the time and procedures for notification of enrollment to a parent or guardian within 24 hours. So after you get that approval from PHMC that the enrollment is approved, you got to make sure you let the family know within 24 hours, and that the time frame for the child to start in the program is within 7 days of programs. Obviously, with your approval, right, if the child is approved and enrolled now, you're not going to start within 7 days, but after program start within 7 days. Grievance policy. So I mentioned that a little bit before. The family grievance policy, that's the one that's included in the family handbook and should be shared with the family at enrollment. So this one kind of defines the rules of engagement if there's a conflict. And really what this helps to do is to make sure that everybody knows what to do if there's a problem, so that things don't escalate and expectations get messed up and people get even more inflamed and upset if there's something going on. So first thing you want to do is identify the steps you want families to follow to resolve issues or concerns. Who do they want to talk to? How do they want to do it? Identify the program contact that will receive grievances from families. Have a backup in case that person is part of the problem. The communication method for families to document their grievance. If you don't want anything verbally communicated, if you want it written down, if there's a special email address for it, if you've got a shoebox where you want people to drop things in, whatever it is, make sure the families know how to give you the information in the right way. a timeline that'll be used to resolve grievances, so everybody knows to expect an answer within a week, so that nobody's mad at you the next day, kind of thing, if it hasn't been completed, because they know when to expect a resolution. The strategies that you will use to ensure confidentiality. Really, this is just about protecting people, making sure that folks aren't getting in everybody's business. And the strategies you're going to use to ensure that all families filing a grievance will be treated fairly. On the screen here, we have a reference to program suspension and expulsion policy. You don't really need to read to the bottom one. That's just an example of some poor language that we found in suspension and expulsion policies previously. The point is that children cannot be suspended or expelled without approval from the intermediary. And Carrie mentioned this before, but suspension includes something like pulling a child out of a classroom and putting them in an administrative office, or sending them home early from school because of a behavioral challenge. If you're concerned about safety, then really this is a time where you want to get with the intermediary, get with the quality support center as soon as possible, to try and work with that family, that child, to figure out the right solution to keep everybody safe and included in your program. I'm not going to read this to you, but you can reference this in the future. This is just some really solid language that we found in a suspension and expulsion policy that really speaks to the principles about inclusion for children at sites. And there are a lot of really good resources out there for providers who are looking to develop policies about suspension and expulsion. And they're really focused on that idea of inclusion and reducing the suspension and expulsion. So there's 3 supports up here. I'll let you folks click into those, and then I'll pass it to Carrie.
So kindergarten transition plan, we have a sample plan in the checklist, and also a template as well, where you can fill in all of your activities. The kindergarten transition should include the date the plan was created, the child's name, parent or guardian, and staff completing the plan. So you should also be including the people responsible for the activities, the target dates, and completion dates for all tasks. And remember, we had mentioned in the previous slides about some deadlines that you needed to meet. Please remember to include those in this plan, and then those childware data entry dates as well. And if you can reference them in the sample. So when you're submitting your line item budget, what you want to do is make sure that total budget amount at the top matches the total budget amount at the bottom. So the bottom one is going to be calculated based on all those line items that you fill in. Make sure that those match. If your budget amount is over or under that range that's specified in that third column, you need to add a justification on the far right. And just make sure you're submitting the correct template. There's one for centers and one for families. In terms of insurance, you'll need coverage that includes general liability, workers' compensation, auto insurance for owned, non-owned, and hired vehicles, professional liability insurance, fidelity bond or criminal insurance. You also need to include on your insurance the City of Philadelphia and Public Health Management Corporation. For those also providing services to students in the School District of Philadelphia or those located in school district facilities, you'll also need to include the school district on your insurance. We have a section in the checklist that speaks about that as well, so you can look further into that. But make sure you have all of the coverage needed, including crime and professional liability insurance. Make sure you're listing both PHMC and the city on the insurance, and then the school district if applicable. Make sure your insurance hasn't expired. Some of the mistakes we've seen in previous submissions is the workers' compensation is often expired. Make sure you have adequate coverage for each required component. And then if you have multiple locations, include them on the insurance document if you have a legal entity. You want to make sure you're working with your insurance agent just to make sure your coverage matches what's in Article 7, which is you can find that in the exhibit checklist. And you don't need to submit the full policy, just the insurance certificate. For direct deposit forms, your provider service specialist should have reached out to you about submitting these earlier. We were trying to get a head start on it. But if you haven't submitted your fiscal forms for direct deposit, please do so immediately. These are your ACH credit authorization form, a copy of your voided check or letter from bank for account verification, your subcontractor questionnaire, and your W-9 form. On the next slide, there are some links. These are what we've been talking about. There's links to the contract exhibit checklist and also a guide for contracts exhibits. I think they're both attached as handouts in this GoToWebinar, and also Kate is going to be throwing them in the chat box. Make sure you download these right away and get started because the deadline is August 5th, and that's coming up pretty soon.
Great, and I just dropped those in the chat for folks, so you can grab the links from there. Thanks,
Great.
Carrie.
All right, the next slide talks about all those deadlines. So the majority of these deadlines on this screen are August 5th, that's a Friday. For the first one, the remote learning waiver, which all providers need to submit. We're going to be sending that follow-up communication about the process. And similar for curriculum assessment, developmental screening waivers, we're going to be following up to tell you how to submit those if that's applicable to you. All those contract exhibits, the ones I read through, need to be uploaded to Childware by August 5th. So that's why we really need you to make sure that you start on those right away. And if you need any, you need to update your contact information or provide your contact information, there's a link there to a form to be able to do so. Now we know that was a lot. So your provider services specialists are here to help you. They're here to support you and get you any assistance that you need. So please reach out to them if you need any clarity on these exhibits. They are holding office hours as well, so you can go in and ask any questions. Here's the dates and links to the Zoom meeting here. They've also been in the provider newsletter weekly, so you can access them to join there as well.
And I think, Carrie, the provider services specialist should have also sent a welcome letter to providers just to introduce themselves. So if you're wondering who yours is, if you haven't received it yet, definitely reach out in the inbox.
Yep.
But they should have been reaching out to you just to make that connect. So you can reach out to them specifically or head to the office hours.
Great. And I think, Allison, do you want to go through this slide?
Sure. So we have a variety of trainings, and all of them are up on our, I just was looking on our events calendar, and all the ASQ, TSG, this training, the suspension and expulsion training are all up on our events calendar. So certainly take a look and sign up if you are interested in participating. This year, we're trying to map out all of these trainings, so hopefully you'll get what you need. We are really trying to be intentional about the training that is very specific to these contract deliverables. So in the coming month, you will see more and more trainings being put on the calendar that support you as you complete the deliverables, most specifically the 3 that we are really helping you with the exhibits. But of course, you can also always reach out to your coach. Coaching assignments will be coming out soon. They'll be coming out next week, and a welcome letter will be sent out by your coach next week as well. So please stay tuned, and we're looking forward to supporting you.
Sorry, was muted there. So as I mentioned, all your documents need to be uploaded into Childware. For any assistance on how to upload those documents, we have a tip sheet available that can be found at the bottom of that checklist too, so you can check that out. If you have any questions, Childware is also holding summer office hours, so you can join that. It starts July 21st and runs through September 1st. That's going to be every Thursday, 2 to 4:30. We'll have a link to join here on the slide, but that has also been in the weekly provider newsletter, so you can access it there as well. So I think that concludes our presentation. Do we have any other questions to go to, Kate?
I'll read some of these out. I answered them in the box, but I just want folks to know in case they're wondering too. When will we get our Childware accounts? So this should have happened actually right after your enrollment training attendance. So if you're wondering where your login is, it was sent to the person who attended. If you still can't find it, I would email helpdesk@phmc.org. That's helpdesk@phmc.org. Mention Childware in the subject line and then let them know what's going on to make sure that you can get the right account access. There's also a question about workers' compensation insurance and how that is through a separate organization than the other insurance provider. So there's at least 2 insurance documents, send them both in. We do need to see evidence of both, so make sure that you send both certificate of insurance in. Yvonne, I see your question about Childware. So their office hours starts this Thursday, 2 o'clock here. So that if you're wondering too about Childware access and how stuff works in there, if you want somebody to kind of walk you through the document upload process, if the tip sheet's just not registering for you, this is a really great resource. So tomorrow, 2 o'clock, and every Thursday after that, Childware will be able to take care of you. There was a question too about when, who documents should be submitted to. So these contract exhibits, again, they're all going to get uploaded into Childware. So if you're feeling nervousy about that and wondering what the process is, really recommend accessing those Childware office hours just to get the logistics down for how to work in Childware. And if you're wondering about how to what needs to be in the exhibits, and you've already looked at the guidelines and you've looked at the checklist, get with your provider service specialist or get to those office hours. They can really help. That's for that one chunk of the exhibits, and then the other chunk, I think that's a suspension and expulsion and a few other policies. That's going to be with the QSC. You can work through those with them. And then there was a question about the rate of reimbursement. It is $875 per approved enrolled child that has attended in a month. Remember, for September and October, you're going to be able to invoice for slot allocation. And after that, it is going to be based on the enrolled and attended, approved enrolled and attended information. We have a question about how to connect with the provider services specialist. They should have sent you that welcome letter. But Manal, I can see, I can check in on our end and see if you should have expected that or reach out. And if you have a preferred contact email that you want them to use, you can drop it in the question box and I'll make sure that that's what they're using. I think that's it. I think that's all my questions. Ooh.
Okay, great. We do have a little bit of extra time. So Allison, if you'd like to show the Knowledge Center, you can go ahead and do so.
I would be happy to.
Let me know when you're ready.
Ready whenever you are. Okay. All right. So this is our events calendar. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the events calendar and our website in general, and the also the Knowledge Center, so you get some familiarity with it. So first and foremost is the events calendar. These color legends, it's just a legend. It is not clickable. It just helps you to know which categories or which colors. Eventually, these will be linked to all the things in the calendar, but they aren't yet. And as you can see, there is trainings already up here for August for creative curriculum and understanding ASQ, There's another ASQ. It is more than half an hour or an hour. It is a 2-hour training, so that will be adjusted. But literally what you will do is, if you're interested in attending these trainings, you literally just click on the box and it tells you the times, and then you hit register, and it allows you to register for this event. It highlights what the event is, and then you will get an invite from Zoom to attend. The other thing I want to show you is kind of how you can reach us, right? So the events calendar, you can search this way. And then if I go to home, I am now on the Knowledge Center. And the Knowledge Center is really where you can get any kinds of resources that will support you as you start working and implementing FY23 or if you're a returning provider, get additional supports if you are looking for anything, any resource. There's a couple of ways you can connect with us. There's this lovely chat with us box up here on the right-hand side. You literally hit start chat, and you'll be chatting with probably Nicole, and if it's not Nicole, it will be one of our coaches. And Nicole or one of our coaches will easily get you in touch with whoever it is you might want to connect with, or help you find a resource, or help you even navigate the Knowledge Center if you're not sure. The other thing that we wanted to make sure you knew is that about these resources. So we have these quick links. If you hit the quick links, it'll take you exactly to those things that are listed. So for instance, I know that we've heard about newsletters today. If you click on the newsletter for OCF, here are all the newsletters. If you misplaced one or you're not sure if you read it, you can always come here and look at it again. Then there's these hyperlinks to featured topics. These are usually topics that we hear a lot about in this that are happening in the programs. And so you literally will click into these boxes, and up will come a variety of resources that are key to supporting you and helping you understand or give your teachers new information or your parents, whichever you want. You can use this a variety of ways. You can also go to all topics and literally type in a topic. So for instance, if I'm curious about observations, I'm going to put in that word, and everything that we have about observations is listed, so that you can start to understand, whatever it is that you're looking for. The other thing that we want to make sure that you're aware of is there's this banner at the bottom of the Knowledge Center too, which is our help desk. Our help desk is monitored all the time. Actually, Nicole also manages that. She will, if you call this number, she will help you. That's what we need. We are here to do. And you can also contact us at any point by clicking on this button that helps you connect with anybody on the team. And then you can also, this is a cool feature, you can submit your own resources if you're interested in. You found a great resource, you're at a conference and you want to share it with others, feel free to submit the resource and it will go up on this Knowledge Center so other people can have access. There's also on our website, our overall website, let me just go to that. If we go to our full website, this is our full website. There's also all these other ways to get in touch with us. And then you can certainly, if you have some question and you need some specific support, you can hit partner referral. It's another way to say I need help. Usually a partner will do that, but you can certainly click in there and we can get you help. I would say, however, that it's better to go through the help desk phone number or the chat with the expert to get the support you need. And that's pretty much it. I will say that your coach will be reaching out to you next week. You'll get a welcome letter. You'll find out their name, and they will be available to support you. But in the meantime, you're welcome to reach out through this, through the website, and we hope that we can be helpful to you as you get started your new school year. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Allison. So that concludes our presentation today. Are there any final questions that came in that we want to answer, Kate, before we sign off?
Doesn't look like it. There was a question about the links that were up on the screen. You can't click on stuff that you see on the slides here because it's just presented through GoToWebinar. I did drop in the chat the link to the contract exhibit checklist and guidelines, so make sure you check those two things out. Also the childware document, upload protocol, and actually let me put in the training for childware office hours as well. Just so that folks know to get to those. So for the office hours, that's something that if you click on it now, no one will be there, right? Because they're not scheduled. So make sure that you're only clicking on it when the office hours are scheduled, which start every Thursday, starting tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So I just dropped that link in the chat there, childware office hours. But that's how you'll be able to access that when the office hours are scheduled. And if you have any other questions, you can send them to phlprek@phmc.org inbox, and we will find them and get back to you.
Great, thanks so much. And thank you all for attending. Really appreciate you being here with us. Please reach out if you have any questions and get started on those exhibits due August 5th. So thanks all. Have a great day.
Bye, folks.